Welcome to the AHA Show,
where we hope to provide abundantly helpful advice through real stories of inspiration and achievement.
You know, Alex, we've shared, my story and the aha moment that you've had. And I want people to hear what your story is. And I'm a very spiritual person, and you go through as many times as I have, coming close to death with different situations that I've been through. I had been a keynote speaker last year at my demigod in the real estate industry, Miss Bernice Ross, at her amazing Females of Real Estate event. And it was funny because in that moment you had just flown out to go take a very important meeting. So Alex actually missed my keynote speech, and we had actually met prior to this. So when I gave my speech, it was the first time that I ever told my entire story in public. I really hadn't told anybody in my family my story, and you'd missed that. And then when Alex came back, she shared her story on stage, and that moment was my aha moment, where I was listening to her story, which we're about to share with you right now, and I just started crying, and I said, God, I hear you, I understand. He puts people in other people's lives for a reason. I'm a firm believer that nothing is by chance. And that's when I knew that fire got in my belly. And I knew that we were meant to be together. We had a journey, and we had to do something to give back to other people. So with that, will you please share your story with everyone?
I remember that moment. I remember being on that stage interviewing and trying to hold back the tears. And I remember this beautiful woman sitting in the back of the room, and she was bawling, and I had no idea. I know you, Jennifer, but I had no idea what your story was. And I mean, it was an instant connection between the two of us. And really, my story is I'm a Vietnamese immigrant. And a lot of people don't know this about me, but I grew up in a refugee camp after the Vietnam War. And my father, after we immigrated to the United States, was the Forrest Gump of Mississippi. And I've always felt out of place. I mean, imagine being an Asian girl living in the deep South with your father being a fisherman and feeling like from the day you were born, you have no country, no place that you belong. Yeah. And it was that anger and that confusion. But it wasn't until I was about, when I was about 10, 11 years old that the biggest shift in my life happened. My parents ended up losing everything, and our family became homeless. And I remember my parents, in an effort to really shield the children, 4 girls, from the homelessness, they shipped me to live with my aunt in Wisconsin. I had never seen snow before. And this was the story, because I had never seen snow before. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, it's so cold. I had a hole in my shoe, and this was a room filled with women. And I remember my mom, she would come to Wisconsin a few times a month, like once or twice a month, whatever she can afford, to give money to my aunt. And that one winter, I was so upset at my mom, and I was just a kid. I was upset, I was uncomfortable, I was angry at everybody, and I had a hole in my shoe, and I told my mom, I gotta go get new shoes. And she bought me to get new shoes. And as we were walking out of the Payless store, my mother's walking out in front of me, and as we're leaving the store, she's wearing penny loafers, and I could see the soles of her shoes coming off, and I could see her bare foot through her shoes when she had just bought me, her daughter, a new pair of shoes.
The guilt, huh?
And at that moment, it wasn't guilt. It was finally a moment, aha moment, of taking all that anger and all that and turning into a moment of incredible gratitude.
Wow.
How many people had sacrificed their lives? My mother, my father, my just church groups, how many people had paved the way? And I was thankful to actually be homeless in the United States, because it could have been worse.
Could have been a lot worse, yeah.
And I think that anybody who's watching this, who have, if you're a daughter, you have a mother, you are a daughter, or whatever it is, those relationships, and you hear that story. It's just, I've done many things. I've worked at the White House. And taking that perspective and changing it from anger to absolute God-given, just gratitude to, what has happened. It's just really taking that moment and then fueling it to change your life.
How did that happen though? And that's what I want to share. This is also an aha moment. You have to hear about what the three girls have done with their lives. It's not just you, it's your sisters as well. So, I mean, coming from that kind of background, and then tell us a little bit about you going into the White House and then what your sisters have done too. Because your family is just, it's, and also the message I want to get out before we get onto that, it's like if you are a 10-year-old, a 13-year-old girl, my dad always said, take the girls and lock them up and let them out when they're 18 because the hormones go mad. Right. But if you're hard on your mom and you're a single parent, and think about the story, Alex, that you're saying, the children really never know what their parents are going through and the hardships. You got to really take this in perspective, and I hope the kids reach out this message. Right. But how did you and the girls, how did you change your lives and become so successful?
Well, life wasn't perfect, and I think that my parents did the best they can. Sometimes I say I was, my parents grew up in a village in Vietnam in a grass hut, and we came to the United States. And so, it wasn't perfect, but what I will say is that, our parents did the best that they could. And, there were times where we didn't have enough, but, going back and today, my sisters and I, I'm the oldest of four girls, and I think I got to talk about my mom.
Yeah.
One of the things I will say about my mom is she was probably the leader in the family that even though we had no home, she knew that we had to have an education.
Wow.
So it wasn't she knew, and so every dollar she made. And so I'm probably the underachiever of the family. I have, my sisters went to Yale and Columbia, and I've done amazing things. One of my sisters was a producer for CNN, and now she's actually a reporter for New York One. And then my other sister went to Yale and then went to graduate school at Columbia, and now she was the vice president of a VP for Microsoft, and then Viacom Media, did all sorts of stuff, so I'm super proud of her. Yeah. So, so there's all these things that we've accomplished. I mean, and myself, I call myself the underachiever because I don't have a master's degree like all my sisters, right? But I will say that, probably one of the surreal moments was working on a presidential campaign, working at the White House before I went into real estate and started, and I'm an executive at a real estate tech company today. So.
The C-suite level. It just goes to show you, and I hope the aha moment that you take away from this is it doesn't matter about your background. Never say never, and you can always achieve anything that you put your mind through. And just because you come from poverty or you're in that situation, look at all the amazing stories of people and beautiful women like yourselves. But again, it's just an attribute to your mom, and to be the best mommy out there that you possibly can, and that is exactly what you do for your children. And it's such an inspiration for me, and I hope that as we continue to do our AHA show, that you'll be more of an inspiration to so many other mommies and single parents and just families that are out there as well. So we love you, we appreciate you, and we live in gratitude.
And so with that, we got to hear your story, Jen. Are you ready?